Today we are presenting Introduction to Civil 3D's Grading Optimization Program. We have Jeff Morris with us, and I will pass things over now to Jeff. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Kareem. Yes, this webcast is introducing Civil 3D's Grading Optimization Program. And I am Jeff Morris. I'm a learning content developer here with ASCENT, the Center for Technical Knowledge. And good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be from. So we will be introducing the Grading Optimization Program. This is an add-on to Civil 3D, and you require access to the Autodesk 2022 AEC collections to be able to access the Grading Optimization Program. It is a separate install for Civil 3D, and it requires Civil 3D 2022. And the learning guide that Kareem had mentioned, it is based on the Grading Optimization Program 1.2 because they made some changes to it. That also requires Civil 3D 2022.1. So much for the fine print. Okay, so during this webcast, we will be looking at the concept of the grading optimization, how it interacts with Civil 3D. We will be looking at the Civil 3D interface for the grading optimization. And then we will be looking at the grading optimization interface. It is a separate program that can run concurrently with Civil 3D. It's a separate window, and so you can move that. If you have multiple screens, you can move it off the screen and continue to work in Civil 3D. And when the optimization is complete, or if you want to interrupt it, then you can port the results back into Civil 3D. We will be doing a software demonstration based on one of the practices in this new learning guide. And then we will wrap things up with a question and answer period. Okay, so the concept of grading optimization is that you create your geometry in Civil 3D. They can be regular AutoCAD objects, or they can be Civil 3D feature lines or points. And a variety of objects require a point. Some grading objects require a linear element, and some require a closed polyline or feature line. Once the geometry is created, we attach grading objects to that geometry, and then we set the parameters of those grading objects within Civil 3D. Then we launch the grading optimization program, and as I said, that's a separate window altogether that can be moved to a separate screen, can be minimized, so that you can actually continue to work in Civil 3D. And then once the optimization is complete, it goes through all its iterations, you can return the results back to Civil 3D. And you have the choice of either merging it with an existing surface, merging the feature lines into an existing site, or creating updating a point group, an existing point group, or you have the choice of creating new surfaces, sites, or point groups for your results. And then you finally have a Civil 3D surface that you can then refine with the various Civil 3D tools for grading. Okay, so the Civil 3D interface, all the grading objects are together accessible through a specific tool palette, a grading objects tool palette that you see on the left there. And once objects are assigned in your Civil 3D drawing, they show up in the grading object browser. So you will notice in this example that we have one building pad and two zones zones assigned, as well as one exclusion zone and one grading limit. And you can see that by the number in the brackets after the category. There is on the Analyze tab of Civil 3D, we have a grading optimization panel that allows you to open or close the grading object browser or the tool palettes. And we also have the Optimize button, which is used to launch the grading optimization program. Whenever you assign a grading object to geometry within a Civil 3D drawing, there's a variety of defaults that come through with these parameters, and you can either accept them or modify them. One thing I tend to harp about in the course is to name the various grading objects with a meaningful name so that later on within the grading optimization program, they're easily identified. By default, it takes I think it takes the name of the layer and it suffixes it with a numerical value, like next counter. Once you launch the grading optimization, the grading optimization window appears. Oh, I should also mention, and I do mention this in the book, these screen captures are done with a light background, so they show up better in our printed material. But by default, and the software demonstration that I will be doing, it will be done with out-of-the-box dark background and a black screen. But all these screen captures that you see are done with a white background, just for higher visual fidelity. So within the grading optimization window, you have your main graphics screen where you can zoom and pan, very similar to navigating within the InfraWorks window. You have your grading object browser over on the left-hand side, which is similar but not identical to the Civil 3D grading object browser. Along the bottom, we have the optimization toolbar with a variety of tools, and we have a variety of surface themes that we can assign to the surface. For example, just a regular old monochrome one. We can assign for different slopes, and we can actually assign the slope values as it's how it's being graduated. We can assign the aspects so that every triangle or underlying triangle of the surface will be colored according to the direction that it faces. We can have a contour view, or we can have a triangulated tin view, which the grading optimization calls wireframe, or we can have elevation ranges. And the screen capture that I have above, that shows the elevation. During the optimization program process, we can open up the convergence plot, and the upper panel will show how many iterations it's going through. The lower left panel gives you a running total of the earthworks quantities in terms of cut and fill. And the lower right panel shows you how it's processing with smoothing the surface. And it's a good idea to keep an eye on the convergence plot so that if, especially the upper panel, if that kind of flat lines half the way through, that tells us that it can't do any more processing. So there might be some conflict within the grading object parameters that you need to resolve. We can also assign a visual feedback in terms of cut and fill. So in this particular example, you see that the pond, obviously elements are being cut out of the pond and it's being filled over on the outside. So we can get visual feedback as to the cut and fill areas. This is obviously a little bit difficult to see, but we can also turn on the hydrology view. And every triangle will have a small arrow showing the direction of the arrow, which shows us the direction of the water flow. This doesn't need to be in the tin view or the wireframe view. These arrows will also show up with the contour view. And then we have the violation view. So as it's going through and triangulate processing, we get visual feedbacks in per triangle as to the violations. If it's just a regular white triangle, then both the parameters are within the limits. The parameters being maximum slope or the minimum drain slope. The darker color shows that the maximum slope is being violated. It cannot be met. It will also designate where the minimum drain slope cannot be met, or there are some examples where both the maximum and the minimum drain slopes cannot be met, and that shows up in the violation view. And that too can be viewed either in the contour mode or in the triangulation mode. Finally, once the processing is done, I should also mention that there are you can go into the optimization program and tell it how many iterations you want. The whole optimization can take quite a long time. For complex surfaces, it's recommended that you do that either over lunchtime. In some cases, you may want to process it overnight because it can take a long time. You can interrupt it at any point, or when the processing is complete. Then you have the option of you can just close out of it if you don't want to save the results, or you can save the results back to the Civil 3D program, and it will go back to the drawing that had opened up, that had launched the optimization program in the first place. And then you have the choice of creating a new surface from the results or updating an existing surface. The same for a new site or updating an existing site. For the feature lines that the grading optimization has created. And finally, for the points, you can create a new point group or you can update an existing point group. But this is only for the grading optimization points. There's particular point objects within the grading objects, such as low points, bounded points, and these can be grouped together into a point group. So here we see that we did generate a site called parking, and in that parking site, we have all these feature lines that have come back from the grading optimization program. And all the feature lines have the name that we assigned to it in the first place. So if you go back a couple slides when I recommended to name the various grading objects, this will help a lot later on in your fine tuning within Civil 3D, because you can easily identify the various feature lines, surfaces, points that you need to manipulate. It will also generate a point group. Here we have the parking point group. And finally, we have the surface that it generates. Mentioned earlier, the grading optimization program, it is artificial intelligence. It does its best going through all the iterations to come up with a solution, but it is not perfect. And we will always need to do some fine tuning within the grading optimization. We will need to do some fine tuning with the surface within Civil 3D using our traditional Civil 3D grading tools or feature edit tools. Okay, so time for a drink first. My throat is dry. And now for the software demonstration. Okay, so this is Civil 3D. I changed it back to the traditional out-of-the-box black background and the dark theme. And so when I launch my grading optimization program, that will also have the dark interface. So this is a practice. It's a little bit modified, but 95% is out of the courseware that's going to be released. And what we have is we have two sites. We have the southern site and the northern site. And as I go through the various tools and kind of lead you step by step for grading the northern site, then you also have the ability to practice the same in the southern site. I actually have, for the pond, I do have a surface that is currently frozen, suggesting a pond layout area, but I give you free rein to do what you want to do on the southern site. If I come over to my surfaces, there are two surfaces in this drawing, and you notice that both of them are data shortcutted. They're referenced through data shortcuts. One is IDG North, which is which I term the interim design grade, and that is the one that I based the preliminary pond design on. And the other one is my building north EG for existing ground. So what we've done up to this point is the first step is we generated this interim design grade with the grading optimization program. Then we use that to generate the pond. And then we saved the combined pond IDG surface, and we use that to generate the parking. And then we combined those surfaces, created a data shortcut, and we referenced that parking surface into this drawing as the building north existing ground. And just by looking at the contours, you see that the parking has already been graded. We see how it jumps over the curb. The contours jump over the curb, and then they jump back down on the curb. So a lot of the work has already been done. And at this particular drawing, most of the grading objects have already been assigned, but what I'm going to be doing now is not part of the class. Just to show you, I'm going to set my layer to the building pads layer. I'm just going to generate a polyline. A building pad needs to be an enclosed, a closed polyline. So I'm just going to generate a polyline here, just a regular AutoCAD polyline. And now I want to assign the building pad grading objects to that. And so I go to my Analyze tab, and on the far right, you see 3 panels here. We have the grading optimization panel with 4 components. The grading object will open up both the palettes and the object browser, or I can open and close them individually by the next small icons. So this will open and close my tool palette, and this will open and close my grading object browser. Even if I have my tool palette already open to a different palette, and I click on the palettes, it will open up that particular palette for the grading objects. And then finally, we have the Optimize, which will launch the grading optimization program. So I've drawn a building pad, and it doesn't need to be on this specific layer. I tend to be a bit CAD management crazy, and I love things to be on their proper layers. So that's why it's on this particular layer. I click on building pad, and I say say I click on building pad. Let's try this again. Okay, it took a little bit to launch, and it's asking me for an object. I can select multiple objects, but I'm just going to select that one, hit enter, and then my grading object properties opens up, and I can rename this, call it lot demo, and I can assign various aspects to this. If I have a specific, so for the building pad, if I want to tell it the specific fixed elevation, I can toggle on elevation, toggle on fixed elevation value, and type in what value I want this building pad to be set as. Or I can toggle off fixed elevation, give it an elevation range for the minimum and maximum elevations. Or I can toggle it off altogether, and I will let the grading optimization program figure out what the best elevation for this is. I can level the grading pad, and I can also assign it a depth of material for, say that the depth of the foundation and the gravel underneath that. If I want to start informing the calculating the cut fill volumes, I can assign a depth of material for that. So I'm going to leave it all the way it is. Now, if I select other objects that have already been predefined, all the parameters open up again. So, for example, for this one, we let the grading optimization come up with the proper elevation for this building pad. Just going to hit escape to close that. Whereas for this one of these building objects, we actually assign the elevation. You will also notice that I have a red line here, and this is actually what is known as a building reveal. So if I expand my in my grading object browser, here you see all the grading objects that building pads that have been assigned, and the ones that have a triangle next to it actually have the reveals next to it. And what a reveal is, it's just as it sounds. In this particular area, it will allow the reveal, the surface and the building pad to be revealed, so the surface will grade underneath it to reveal as much as it needs. And if I click on the reveal, I can assign the minimum and maximum difference for the reveal. I have a couple of retaining walls here. I have some curbs here, and this is all in the in my grading object browser. To assign a reveal, you notice that there is not a reveal over in my tool palettes. I have to do this through the right-click menu. So I select a building pad, and I can right-click, and I can add a reveal segment to that. Now, if I have already assigned a grading object to some geometry, I can always right-click and I can remove the building pad, and it will take that away. Or if I assign another grading object to that, then it removes the building pad from that and assigns, in this case, the sidewalk. So I did a couple things here. I've already had the object selected, and then I selected my grading object, so it automatically went to that particular object. Okay. So I'm just going to go back and assign my building pad. So now the building pad is there, and I'm going to rename it lot demo. Okay, just want to look at a few. I'm not going to go through all the grading objects here. I'm just going to pick a few other ones that are not quite as intuitive as they could be. One is the retaining wall, which is very similar to the curves. Earlier in my talk, I talked about this being grading optimization 1.2, I believe. And one thing that they released in 1.2 is the retaining wall. This is a new one that is not available in grading objects 1.0. What's not quite intuitive about this is when selecting the higher side of the retaining wall displays as a shaded line. Well, it's, for me anyways, it's very difficult to figure out what is the shaded line. I know that one is darker than the other, but what is this? Which one is shaded? So my little tip is, you see where the grips are? That the grips for the polyline, the square or the rectangle right in the middle, that designates the lower line. That is the original geometry, and the shaded line designates the higher side. So that's a little tip for you. And within the grading objects, you can always reverse it. So what I just did there is I flipped the retaining wall. So now the northern side is the higher side. I'm going to flip it back. Or I could just use the AutoCAD reverse command. That will also reverse the geometry and then will reverse the high side for the retaining. That's about it. Oh, here, this is an elevation offset. This is an example of a linear grading object. And what we have here is I can designate from this point to this point, the offset will be 2 feet. And it all depends on which direction the line was originally drawn. So in this case, this to the left is my start point and to the right is my end point. No, the other way around. Sorry. Because what I want is I want my office footprint to be 2 feet higher than my walk. So yeah, so where I start my point, this is the high point, and where my end is the low point, and the elevation difference will be 2 feet. We have a few more retaining walls up here. Just hitting escape as I select them. I have a reveal here, and this is a zone for walkout. One more thing, what I did is I assigned my accessible path to this particular object. And there's a few objects here like parking lot, sidewalk, accessible path. They all get grouped together under zone. So you notice here in my grading object browser, there is not a sidewalk category or an accessible path or a parking lot category. They all get grouped together in zone. And any of these zones, we can set that to the grading limit. So this is my office walkout. If I assign that to my grading as my grading limit, then it disappears from my zone category and it gets moved to my grading limit category. I'm going to toggle grading limit off again for my office walkout, and it moves back up to the zone. And so we have 3 grading limits, and within these grading limits, that does 2 things. It tells us how far the grading optimization needs to go out to look for solutions. And it will also allow us to assign maximum and minimum slopes, drain slopes for this particular zone. Okay, time to launch the grading optimization program. I had already. Oh, good. It's asking me which, because I have 2 surfaces in here, it's asking me for which surface to use as my existing ground. And you notice that in brackets, it has the previous one that I used. So I can just hit enter to use building north EG as my existing ground. And now it launches the grading optimization program. I had already previously launched that. The first time you launch it, it does take a little bit longer because it is its separate program. And this is the interface that we talked about. In the interface, we have, I've assigned multiple drain lines between these parcels. And we've treated these 3 drain lines separately. One is just a regular old drain line. So if I click on it, the parameters open up. The second one is a drain line that is surrounded by a zone. So I have a zone around this drain line, and the third is actually just a drain line that is has 2 bend lines on either side. One thing that you notice is within the grading optimization, what I can do in this one that I couldn't do in Civil 3D is I can turn these on or off. So currently I don't have my grading limit for the residential enabled. So then it would not do the grading for the residential. I can toggle that on. I can toggle it on, and I can also make it visible. So now I have 3 different grading limits going on in this. So when I start to optimize, you will see that all 3 of them are being processed simultaneously. I'm going to click on my optimization windows. I'm going to set this just to 10,000. We won't even be able to do 10,000. And this is where I can set my objective weights in terms of balancing cut and fill. If I had a specific number that I wanted for my net cut and fill, I can put that in here. I can how important it is to minimize earthworks, and how important is it to smooth the surface. Oh, one more thing. This is my global aspects of my minimum and maximum slopes. So now I'm going to click on optimize. A variety of warnings come up. That's nothing too serious, because what we have, so now it's triangulating, now it's starting to optimize. Those warnings mean that I have some very steep slopes going on here, and that is because I do have an existing retaining wall on the site, and that retaining wall exceeds the minimum and maximum slopes that we have. So now it's going on, and you might be able to hear my fans jumping into high, because it's doing a lot of processing. And it's pretty cool, because what you can see is you can see the contours starting to shape as it's trying to solve all of the optimizations going on in the 3 different sites. So here you can see the retaining walls forming, my reveal forming. This is my walkout that I had. It's trying to solve this elevation offset between my building pad and the walk around the office building. It is putting my 2 retaining walls here for, this is known as the hotel site. We actually put in my colleague, Randy McCullum, helped me with this from ImagineIt, and he developed these cool little steps going up into my hotel along with some bend lines. So there's a lot going on here. I have my visualization toolbar, and that allows me to look at the violation views. So as we're proceeding here, some of them have violation views going on. Kind of difficult to manage, navigate as we process all this. And if I hover over one of these violations, it gives me in the tooltip the exact number of how it's being violated. I'm going to turn off my violation views and just look at my wireframe, which is my tin view. And I can, for the hydrology view, it's best if you zoom in to where you want before you turn on your direction arrows, because it can really start bogging. This isn't too bad, but it can really start bogging down your display. So here you see how the slope is being formed in terms of the drainage. I'm going to turn this back off again. I don't want to see that. And finally, these themes, we can look at the slope values or the aspect, which is the direction the triangles are facing, or the elevations. I can set it to monochrome or just turn it off altogether. Okay, well, I'm going to stop. No, one more thing. I want to look at the convergence here. So the convergence plot is might be a wee bit concerned here because it's starting to level out. I would expect it coming down even further. It's smoothing of the surface. It's getting closer and closer to a smooth surface. And my cut and fill calculations are performing. And my fans are really heating up, so hope it doesn't interfere with my sound quality. So I'm going to stop this. And I can either just close right out of my optimization program if I didn't want to save it, or I can send my optimization results back. My fans are slowing down a little bit. And so here I can have a chance of creating a new surface, building north, and I can assign what surface style I want for that. I'll assign it with slope arrows. My feature lines, I want to make them into a new site, building north, and also my points. I'm going to assign them to a new point group. Don't freeze on me, don't freeze on me. Oh well, we'll just, very nervous here. Murphy is on my shoulder and he's ready to pounce for Murphy's Law. I'm just going to click finish. Oh, I don't have any points. That's why I can't create a new point group, because I don't have any points. Okay, so let's click finish. Now it's creating the new surface and it's creating a new site and putting the feature lines in that site. Again, in my course, I recommend highly that you save your drawing before you invoke your object viewer. Now I can open up my object viewer. And so within the iterations that we did, I mean, we only iterated for a few minutes, and it already came up with some pretty impressive results. And so this is the optimization that it did with just that short little bit. So you see the building pads, the elevation offsets, the retaining walls that we put in, the various drain lines that we put in. Now, this is by no means perfect. We'll still have to do quite a lot of fine tuning in the Civil 3D, or I could tweak the grading objects and run it through the iterations again. But it's pretty impressive, I think, with what it's done so far. Okay, so back to my PowerPoint here. So as I mentioned, this is all explained in our courseware. So we looked at the overall concept of the grading optimization, how you set things up within the Civil 3D objects, you assign the grading objects to the geometry that we develop in Civil 3D. Then we looked at the grading optimization interface, where we can tweak some things. We can set up the parameters, we can set up the options, we can view how it's going on. Then we can port everything back into Civil 3D. So this courseware, it's to be released December 20th, 2021. So just in time for the holidays, kids. And so little bit of the fine print for this particular course. This class assumes that you have a proficiency with AutoCAD and Civil 3D, and it is recommended that the students have completed the either our Civil 3D Fundamentals or our Civil 3D Fundamentals for Land Developers course. And this course is designed to complement our Civil 3D Fundamentals for Land Development course. However, it is not a requirement. I mean, a lot of people are already very familiar with Civil 3D, and they just want to learn more about this course, the grading optimization. So this course is a standalone course for that particular purpose. And as I mentioned earlier, this course was developed with the grading optimization 1.2. And so if you don't have the grading optimization 1.2, a few things won't work in this. For example, the retaining walls or the curves, some other things. You can still get through it, but it is recommended that you run this with the grading optimization 1.2.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And now we'll share with you our contact information. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to us here at courseware@ascented.com, or you can give us a call. And to purchase this new training guide that we've been discussing, you can visit our website, ascented.com, or directly on the AscentEstore.com. You can purchase it there as well. We thank you very much for your time today.